The Boy Who Broke the Bank by Ruskin Bond. Nathu, the sweeper boy, grumbled to himself as he swept the steps of a small local bank owned by Seth Govindram, a man of wealth whose haphazard business dealings had often brought him to the verge of ruin. Nathu used the small broom hurriedly and carelessly. The dust, after rising in a cloud above his head, settled down again on the steps. As he banged his pan loudly against a dustbin, Sitaram, the washerman's son, passed by. Sitaram was on his delivery round. He had a bundle of freshly pressed clothes balanced on his head. "Don't raise such dust," he called out to Nathu. "Are you annoyed because they are still refusing to pay you another 5 rupees a month?" "I don't want to talk about it," complained the sweeper boy. "I haven't even received my regular pay. Soon 2 months' pay will be due. Who would think this was a bank holding up a poor man's salary? As soon as I get my money, I'm off. Not another week will I work in this place." And Nathu banged the pan against the dustbin several times. "Well, I wish you luck," said Sitaram. "I'll be on the lookout for a new job for you." And he plodded barefoot along the road, the big bundle of clothes hiding most of his head and shoulders. At the 4th home he visited, delivering the washing, Sitaram overheard the woman of the house saying how difficult it was to get someone to sweep the courtyard. Tying his bundle, Sitaram said, "I know of a sweeper boy who's looking for work. He might be able to work for you from next month. He's with Seth Govindram's bank just now, but they aren't giving him his pay, and he wants to leave." "Oh, is that so?" said Mrs. Prakash. "And why aren't they paying him? They must be short of money," said Sitaram with a shrug. Mrs. Prakash laughed. "Well, tell him to come and see me when he's free." Sitaram, glad that he had been of help to both a customer and his friend, hoisted his bag on his shoulders and went on his way. Soon after, Mrs. Prakash set out for the bazaar to make her usual afternoon tour of the cloth shops. A large, shady tamarind tree grew near the clock tower. It was here that she found her friend, Mrs. Bhushan, sheltering from the heat. "Do you know, my dear," Mrs. Prakash said, "that Seth Govindram's bank can't even pay its employees? Only this morning, I heard a complaint from their sweeper boy who hasn't received his pay for 2 months. "It's disgraceful," exclaimed Mrs. Bhushan. "If they can't pay the sweeper, they must be in a bad way. None of the others can be getting paid either." Mrs. Bhushan left Mrs. Prakash at the tamarind tree and went in search of her husband, who was found sitting under the fan in Jugal Kishore's electrical goods shop, talking with the owner. "So there you are," cried Mrs. Bhushan. "I've been looking for you for nearly an hour. I don't know what's happening to this town. Did you know the bank is going bankrupt?" "What did you say?" said Mr. Jugal Kishore, sitting up suddenly. "Which bank?" "Why, Seth Govindram's bank, of course. I hear they have stopped paying their employees. No salary for over 3 months. Don't tell me you have an account with them, Mr. Kishore." "No, but my neighbor has," he said, and he called out to the keeper of the barber shop next door. "Faiz Hussain, have you heard the latest? Seth Govindram's bank is about to collapse. You'd better take your money out while there's still time." Faiz Hussain, who was cutting the hair of an elderly gentleman, was so startled that his hand shook and he nicked his customer's right ear. The customer yelped with pain and distress. Pain because of the cut and distress because of the awful news he had just heard. With one side of his neck still unshorn, he leaped out of his chair and sped across the road to a general store where there was a telephone. He dialed Seth Govindram's number. The Seth was not at home. Where was he then? The Seth was holidaying in Kashmir. Oh, was that so? The elderly gentleman did not believe it. He hurried back to the barber's shop and told Faiz Hussain, "The bird has flown. Seth Govindram has left town. Definitely, it means a collapse. I'll have the rest of my haircut another time." And then he dashed out of the shop, making a beeline for his office and checkbook. The news spread through the bazaar with the rapidity of a forest fire. From the general store, it travelled to the tea shop, circulated amongst the customers, and then spread with them in various directions to the pan seller, the tailor, the fruit vendor, the jeweler, and the beggar sitting on the pavement. Men stood in groups at street corners discussing the situation. The small town in the foothills seldom had a crisis and never had floods, earthquakes, or drought, and so the imminent crash of the local bank set everyone talking and speculating and rushing about in a frenzy. Some boasted of their far-sightedness, congratulating themselves on having already taken out their money or on never having put any in. Others speculated on the reasons for the crash, putting it all down to Seth Govindram's pleasure-loving ways. The Seth had fled the state, said one. He had fled the country, said another. Others insisted that he was hiding somewhere in town. Someone who had a relative working as a clerk in the bank decided to call him and get the facts. "I don't know anything about it," said the clerk, "except that half the town is here, trying to take their money out. Everyone seems to have gone mad. There's a rumor that none of you has been paid. Well, the clerks have had their salaries. We wouldn't be working otherwise. It may be that some of the part-time workers are getting paid late, but that isn't due to a shortage of money. It's just that the clerk who looks after their payments is on sick leave. You don't expect me to do his work, do you?" And he put the telephone down. By afternoon, the bank had gone through all its ready money, and the harassed bank manager was helpless. Emergency funds could only be obtained from one of the government banks, and now it was nearly closing time. The clerks shut down their counters, but people gathered outside, on the steps of the bank, shouting, "We want our money! Give it to us today, or we'll break in. Fetch Seth Govindram. We know he's hiding in the vaults." Mischief makers, who did not have a paisa in the bank, joined the crowd. The manager stood at the door and tried to calm his angry customers. He declared that the bank had plenty of money, that they could withdraw all they wanted the next morning. "We want it now," chanted the people. "Now, now, now!" A few stones were thrown, and the manager retreated indoors, closing the iron grill gate. A brick hurtled through the air and smashed into the plate glass window which advertised the bank's assets. Then the police arrived. They climbed the steps of the bank and pushed the crowd back until the people began falling over each other. Gradually, everyone dispersed, shouting that they would be back in the morning. Nathu arrived next morning to sweep the steps of the bank. He saw the refuse and the broken glass and the stones cluttering the steps. Raising his hands in horror, he cried, "Gundas! Hooligans! May they suffer from 1,000 ills! It was bad enough being paid irregularly. Now I must suffer an increase of work?" He smacked the steps with his broom, scattering the refuse. "Good morning, Nathu," said Sitaram, the washerman's son, getting down from his bicycle. "Are you ready to take up a new job from the 1st of next month?" "You'll have to, I suppose, now that the bank is closing." "What did you say?" said Nathu. "Haven't you heard? The bank's gone bankrupt. You'd better hang around until the others arrive, and then start demanding your money too. You'll be lucky if you get it." He waved cheerfully and pedaled away on his bicycle. Nathu went back to sweeping the steps, muttering to himself. When he had finished, he sat down on the bottom step to wait for the manager. He was determined to get his pay. "Who would have thought the bank would collapse?" he said to himself, and looked thoughtfully across the street. "I wonder how it could have happened."